So it is Monday night, and I don't know about you guys, but I spent the entire weekend playing the Division 2 beta. And so that's what I'm going to talk about first. As I've mentioned before in one of my earlier streams, I'm going to spend a little bit of time, or I'd like to spend a little bit of time each stream, just talking about what's current in gaming, what's current this weekend, what's kind of coming out, what fun things have happened, what we're doing next, and of course what we're playing and what we've been playing and what we want to play next. And of course the big thing that was happening this weekend is the Division 2 beta was out available for pretty much everyone that was in the closed beta or anyone that pre-ordered. These days, closed beta means you gave them money so you could play the game. And that's certainly what this was this week. So, what did I think about the Division 2 closed beta? First of all, I thoroughly enjoyed it. Had a great time. Overall, I wouldn't have played the whole thing. I pretty much played the entire beta. Like, I got all the way to level 7. I did all the missions. Both zones, I completed all of the activities in both zones that you could do. And even after I got to level 7, played quite a bit. I did the Dark Zone stuff, just played around the Dark Zone just a little bit, not a whole lot. And then I jumped on a level 30 character and I ran the whatever they call it, the in-game mission, that basically their 4-player dungeon, if you will, with my specialization with the crossbow. And I'm going to get to all that here in just a bit. So start from the beginning. So I booted up the thing, got everything installed. I want to say the first night there were quite a few connection problems, a lot of disconnects, and there was some queuing too, which at least they had a queue system, which was more than what Anthem had. I'm going to do a lot of comparisons to Anthem, and at the very end I'm going to do sort of a one-to-one comparison to Anthem and talk about which of these two games I'm more excited about. It's actually pretty much, again, I'm getting ahead of myself. So, started off, booted everything up, didn't have too many problems getting connected, getting into the game, picked my character. And I gotta say, my first initial impressions for the character and the animations, I was actually pretty disappointed with. Maybe it was because in New York you had so much bulky clothing on that they might have been using the same models and you just wouldn't have known. But I saw a lot, the models themselves, the character models, I saw a lot of vertex collapsing around the elbow here and around the shoulders. And you usually don't see that in sort of modern day games and contemporary games, but my elbow was pronating in some very bizarre ways. The vertices were collapsing around the elbow, vertices were collapsing the shoulder. At one point the shoulder fell inside the character and then popped back out. Also my forearm muscles here were, my character were vacillating in very odd ways and kind of falling in and out. And then the animations themselves just seemed a little janky. On the flip side, the animations for the hyenas, all the NPC characters, also didn't seem nearly as polished, nearly as finished as I kind of expected them to be. And those models seemed super thin for whatever reason. I don't have video to show you what I'm talking about this thing. I'm contemplating turning this little diatribe into an actual YouTube video, and if so, I'll try to drum together some footage to show in the background. And if you're seeing that now, well then, that means I did it, and if you're not, that means I did. So, but that was my main complaint. Overall, the character models and animations seemed like a step back from Division 1, which really surprised me given the time and effort. The environment itself was fantastic. Oh my gosh. Ubisoft continues to show how much unique and original content they can create. I loved all of the content that was created for Division 1. It was just, New York was so fantastically realized, and they've done just as good a job with Washington in a whole different sort of artistic direction, with all of the greens, the green and the green forest, the green trees. Feels very summerish. There was a lot of stagnant particle effects in the air that makes it look like static dust particles. Just some really, really beautiful effects all the way around. And of course, it's just rich with detail. The rendering looked a little bit different, and I don't know again if this is a beta thing or not. It seemed like everything had a bit of a higher specular and a little higher, sharper filter across the board. The Division 1 felt very soft and kind of muted colors, especially with all those snowdrifts. Whereas in the Division 2, everything is very sharp, ultra realized, and sort of extra heavy on the displacement maps and extra heavy on the specularity. And in fact, if your character got rained on, when you walked into any one of the safe houses after your character had been rained on, she very much appeared wet, and they had that super high specular wet glow on them that made it almost look rubbery. So I don't know if they're going to tweak that or modify that. It was a nice effect to a certain extent, but it was also a little too much, if you know what I mean. So what else? So it's funny, kind of funny, but Anthem was billed as sort of a demo, and this was billed as a closed beta. And having just played the two one weekend almost right after the other, Anthem was actually more of a beta, really and truly, a very small slice of the game to allow you to kind of test and try out some of the mechanics in the game and a very little bit of, and some of the mob content and things like that. Whereas this was, even though this was called closed beta, this was much more of a demo. Pretty much the first 7 levels of gameplay were there for you to play, including some cinematics, all of the quests, the progression systems. Most of the things that will be in the game were there for this beta, at least the very first versions of them. And whereas on Anthem, I felt like there was a lot of game missing, a huge amount of the game, and I was only seeing a small portion of the game. At least I kind of hoped. So we'll see. So having said that, there was a lot of content. When they drop you off in the game in Division 2, you get a couple of linear narrative, a couple of narrative pieces, some cinematics, and then boom, they put you out in the world. And man, they throw a lot of concepts at you. They've got crafting, they've got settlements, they've got jobs, they've got the factions, they've got jobs to get crafting supplies and do the crafting. They've got contacts that you unlock. They've got various settlements that get upgraded. They've got all these different systems that they sort of just basically drop on top of you when you start playing. And if you've played Division 1, especially if you've played Division 1 currently and you're used to 4 different currencies and all these different things going on, I think you'll figure it out pretty quickly and get a hang of it. If you're coming to the Division 2 for the first time and never played Division 1, I worry that it's going to be a lot to drop on the player right off the bat without sort of layering in these systems as you go along. I don't know if that's going to change or not, but it did seem like they dropped an awful lot of collections and modifications and the systems. The UI is still really kind of hard to parse and hard to grasp. Definitely improved from where it was in the alpha, but there's still it's just a really complex UI. There's a lot going on there, and very often it can be difficult to figure out how to get to what you want to need. Social aspects were also pretty rough. Trying to connect up with your friends and play was almost impossible. I tried multiple times to send out group invites to my friends that were online. They never responded, so either my friends hate me or they were never getting those responses. I suspect it was the latter, but you never know. It could have been the former. So a little bit of roughness there. Hopefully they'll get all the social features figured out. What I want really is just to be able to say, okay, here's my friend online, right-click, join my friend, and jump into that. They did have some PC-specific optimizations, like for instance, I don't know if you noticed, but in the UI menu, there was actual context menu. You could right-click on some of the elements in your inventory and then get context choices from that. So that was pretty cool because you know they don't have that in the console version. The AI and the NPCs themselves, wow. A lot of people on Reddit were talking about this. A lot of people on the internets were talking about this. The mobs have been given a whole swath of deadly abilities by which to kill you. They haven't been made much more intelligent. They can still be exploited pretty easily. And they are, but they're super fast now. They run really quickly when they're trying to get away from you or to run places. They do a lot of head bobbing as they sit behind, which makes it much harder to squeeze off headshots. And they've been given a whole arsenal of things from which to kill you, besides just their normal weapons and things like that. They have little RC cars that roll up onto you and then blow up when they get to you. The grenades were probably the worst. Always before in Division 1, when grenades were thrown, grenade would land next to you, there was a red circle where the grenade landed, and you had a few seconds to get out of the ring. And that wasn't in the beta. Basically, grenades just flew and they blew up when they landed. So if you didn't pick up on the fact that the grenade was coming in, you would get hit, you get knocked out of cover, quite often confused, which is a new status effect that they added, and you would take damage. And then the grenade launchers, the guys, NPCs that launched these grenades or threw these grenades, a lot of times they had grenade launchers with no cooldown. So suddenly you hear boom, 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 boom. That's my sound effect of those things. As they were just launching grenade after grenade, and man, especially for the multiple versions, you would get cooked. When you're playing in solo, they did a really, it's pretty much scaled for you at solo and was a little bit more doable. But then when you played, when you've got 2 players, and Mr. Anderson and I played a lot as 2 players, it really scaled up the difficulty on the mobs across the board, and suddenly things became a lot more difficult. So they have a lot of tweaking, a lot of fine-tuning to do with the mobs. When we played, the most difficult thing that we did was definitely the 4-player level 30 mission, which they intended for that to be sort of a difficult piece of content, and it was. So it was very, even on normal level, we got our arses handed to us quite a bit, so I can only imagine on the higher levels. One of the things they did on Saturday, or at the end of the day Saturday, is they basically gave you 3 copies of your character at level 30 with full loadouts, sort of in-game gear, and 1 for each of the specializations. Now, the specialization is one of the distinguishing features that the Division 2 is bringing along. that they sort of want to help distinguish it from the Division 2, make it feel more like a unique game. The 3 specializations are Sniper or Sharpshooter, Survivalist, which uses a crossbow, and the Demolitions Expert, which uses a mortar launcher or a grenade launcher. They turned all of those things on. Interesting. That would have been interesting. I would have never tried that. Apparently you could shoot grenades out of the air. I've never tried that. But they turned all of these things on, but the way that they generated ammo for them made it really difficult for you to actually exercise and try out your sniper abilities. Now I get, or your specialist abilities. Now I get that they want them to be sort of like ultimates, in that they're only used periodically and sort of in very special cases, in the same way that you used your ultimate ability before. But given that that's sort of a distinguishing feature for the game, I really felt like they fell short on giving you the opportunity to explore and to try out and to see how those separate specializations work. Literally, this is now my experience, not everyone's experience, but for instance, I chose the Sharpshooter, or not the Sharpshooter, but the Survivalist specialization with the crossbow. My crossbow came with 5 shots loaded into it. I fired 4 of them before I went over in the mission, just running around trying to figure out how it worked. I went into the mission and I got 1 more piece of ammo while playing the mission, and that was it. So 6 shots entirely to check it out. And I would have had to play the mission several more times in order to generate more ammo. So and the mission itself takes a little over an hour to run. So in an hour-long mission, to fire that thing 6 times, I felt like is just not enough. And not when it should be this cool distinguishing feature and what separates you from the other 2 players. So role specialization seems largely non-existent in Division 2, kind of like it was in Division 1. Like I felt like you can certainly build specialized type characters that are heavier in defense or heavier in offense, or even in some cases heavier in utility, I suppose. But I still really didn't feel like I had a lot of specialization capabilities within that. So overall, though, I talk about some of the shortcomings of the beta, but overall I was quite pleased with the beta, and there was a lot to play. And in this particular aspect, Mr. Henderson and I may have a little bit of disagreement. But so in comparing the Anthem to the Division 2 beta, they both had a lot, sort of some interesting positives and some good things going for them. They also had some negatives and definitely some sort of counters to them that I felt weren't really hitting the mark quite yet. Both of them have still have a lot of improvement to go. The Division 2, there was a lot more game here. There was really a lot more game to play, and I got a much better feel, I feel like, for what the actual game is going to be like. I liked most of what I saw. I definitely could see myself playing the game. I was already thinking of other things that I wanted to do. When I finished logging out Saturday, I wanted to log in and play some more Sunday. They really do a great job of generating a lot of content for you to do, both in solo and in groups, and I think it's going to be a fantastic the PvE co-op shooter, as the first one was. I think there's a lot there. Anthem 2, Anthem 2's playstyle is significantly different than Division 2's, and I actually like the playstyle better in Anthem 2 than I did in Division 2. I love the flying, I love the mechanics, I love the moving, I love the specializations of the different javelins, more so than the specializations that I felt like there is even specializations for those characters. But Anthem 2 is going to have to step up its game. I want to like Anthem 2, I'm kind of leaning more towards it right now, but I'm also leaning towards it with an air of hopefulness that they're going to deliver a lot more information. They really are significantly, Mr. Anderson says the playstyles are 180 degrees opposites, and they really are. They're significantly different in terms of their playstyles and how they play. They feel like 2 fully different games. And from the playstyles, from just the mechanics of the playing, I had more fun with Anthem's playstyles and with the mechanics. But I'm worried that Anthem is going to be too shallow. So that will be interesting to see if they deliver on sort of the content. They've got to beef up their ability. Gosh, I hope between now and when they ship, in 2 weeks from now, those guys are working night and day, stealing every bit of the group notification stuff that they can from Apex, and are figuring out how to incorporate it, or at least they're figuring out how to put it into the first patch. Because, oh my goodness, Apex, nothing else, has really sort of stepped up the game in terms of group coordination abilities with their ping system, and there are multiple ways to ping multiple kinds of things. Not just locations on the map, but mobs, enemy mobs, loot that you've dropped, and things like that. A really good system for communicating without having to resort to chat. So that's my take overall. Sort of what I thought about the game. I like it. I had really good impressions for the most part. It feels to me, Division 2 is to Division 1 what Destiny 2 was to Destiny. And it's a refinement and an iteration on the first. And if you remember, Destiny 2 still didn't even quite get it quite right until they released the Forsaken expansion. And I understand that's much better. And Division 2 will probably take an expansion or two before they really nail down everything and kind of get it solid. But the potential is definitely there, and I really enjoy it. So that is really all I had to say about Division 2. It is, however, 9:31, so that took, that was supposed to take like 5 minutes, and I think it's